that
Well,
one is my ACD paper.
I got your ACT paper, Trang.
Yeah.
I've got proposal, I guess, right?
Yes.
I've got this exercise of voice, choice, and collaboration in a personalized learning initiative. What is that paper for?
That paper is for the personalized learning initiative with between Fresno Unified School District and Microsoft. So
Okay.
we came in as qualitative researcher, and we did focus group, and that's where the paper came from.
So that's something that your university is working on with Microsoft?
We did, yes. Yeah, that was in 2017.
And then I've got this instructional strategies that respond to cultural learners' needs and MOOCs. That's what we'll focus on
today, yes. And do you have the one on impact of MOOC on online and campus-based learning?
Well, I don't know if I have the impact of MOOC article here.
I can send it to you, not a problem.
Okay. That is published by
the IGI Global.
Okay. And then I've got this. The emotional benefits of diversity in MOOCs, reshaping views of online education through exposure to global learners, which is the chapter in my book coming up.
Yes.
And then I've got something else from you. It's just, I have that upstairs.
Is that the computers and education paper?
The one that was just published.
In computers and education, right?
Maybe that's what it was. What's that on?
Students' pattern of engagement and course performance in a MOOC.
Could be.
Yeah, that was the that was the quantitative paper on the digital storytelling MOOCs.
There's one with a whole set of applications at the end of it, like Kahoot and things like that.
Oh. Then I don't think that's the one.
That's what I'm thinking of. But it was sitting right here. Anyhow, I've got several. And I thought we'd focus on the two MOOCs one, since that's the topic of this week, but we could talk about the others too in your interest thereof. Do you have a short presentation on the MOOC article for us?
Yes, I do. You want me to show those slides? Well, first of all, hello, everyone. They are still mute, but
I've sent your email, your bio to everybody, so they've read your bio.
Okay.
So
just to go ahead and get started with the slides, or?
Yeah. So I'm just a little frazzled because normally my computer's very sound thing. So, you know, hang on 1 second. So Trang is Assistant Professor and Director of Instructional Technology Resource Center, INTERESC. It's almost a new word, at Kremen School of Education and Human Development at California State University, Fresno. Beautiful campus, beautiful place. I've been there a couple of times, or at least I've been on that campus once, in Fresno twice. Dr. Phan's interests in MOOCs are derived from her research at the University of Houston, where she earned her doctorate. Her other areas include faculty uses of technology to enhance student-centered learning, human-centered design, STEM education, as you see, just use of technologies in general, personalized learning. As the director of Interest. She's in charge of training and technology integration in the classroom, so getting faculty and staff and students ramped, especially faculty, I'm assuming, ramped up. So, is that true?
Yeah,
Most of it.
Yeah. So thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Yeah. So let's probably get started, since we have like less than an hour now. Maybe we could start with the MOOC papers, and then if we have more time, we can talk about the other, and like if you have any question for me, I would be happy to answer them.
Right.
All right. Yeah. So Curt, you want me to share the screen, or you will?
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and share your slides and send me your slides so I can have them on file.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm gonna. All right.
You can send them to me later. I'd like to have a CD too later. I didn't see one on file, so an updated one. Jalin, we see you there. Okay. He's my former student now here as visiting scholar. Pram is the TA. Maurice is coming from Houston, where you used to live, Phan, and he's heading to Bush International Airport to pick up his significant other. She's flying in an hour or so. He's got to head out at 1 when you leave. Julie is a visiting scholar from China studying with me, and we have others we'll watch later. So, so Phan is originally from Vietnam and got her degrees in Houston, and now is in California. So, you want me to make you a co-host, or I think you can just share your screen, right? You want to try?
I'm trying, but I don't. Okay, here it is. Okay, so is everyone seeing the screen now?
Yeah. So if you spent, how many slides do you have, by the way? I didn't.
It's a lot. So I think we can kind of pick and choose. We don't have to go through all the slides, but I think the focus today would be probably how I came to this research paper and this research study, and probably talk more about the findings, right? Is that cool?
So I can just tell you to go back. If you skip something that looks interesting, I'll tell you to go back, and maybe 20 minutes on this would be fine, and then we'll spend the rest of the time talking about it. So
so you have the slides and you have the paper, so you have everything.
Yeah.
Yes. So so this paper is part of my dissertation, and it's about the instructional strategy from MOOC instructor and instructional designer that responded to global learners' need in a MOOC. So the reason that that brought me to this research study was I was part of the research design team at U of H, the University of Houston, right? And so we designed a series of 6 MOOCs for professional development purposes for K-12 Texas teachers. And so in doing that, like we were all new, and we learned and we pondered, and we had like, you know, we tried to brainstorm idea, had question, and research other MOOCs by taking other MOOCs and stuff like that. So in that process of exploring the MOOC design, the questions that I constantly have was, you know, like, gosh, it's global learner. So how did professor in other university, they came to, you know, identify the need and then in turn respond to the need, how well they do it and how differently. So that I became increasingly interested in that, and this came the topic. So the focus is on the insights into learners' behavior and needs as determined by the multicultural backgrounds of the instructor and designer. And then when they identify the needs, like how would they respond to the needs that they identify, and what are the pedagogical challenges that they have during that process. And there's a lot of surprising, as you might imagine, and there's a lot of like judge and like fix and go in the meantime. So the research question, as you see on the paper, is like,
by the way, 2 things. One, if you go back a slide there, you'll see 2 things near and dear to my heart. My 2 MOOCs books. Also, your volume went up when you went to share your slides for some reason, and I don't know if that's true of everyone. You're coming in a bit loud, so I'm not sure if you move close. You might move back just a little bit.
Very loud?
Yeah, now you're softer, so I don't know what happened there, but you're maybe there's a sense, you must have a sensitive microphone. Because, yeah, it went from soft to loud.
How about now? Good?
It's a little soft, but it's good. It's fine. Maurice, okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. So research questions their perception and understanding of the learner's need and the strategies that they have that responded to the need and pedagogical challenges. And here are some key terms for us.
That links to this week where you talk about cultural diversity.
Yeah.
And so you're getting at diversity here and multicultural education.
Right. Yeah.
These were key things of interest to you before you started the program, or is this something you evolved from MOOCs?
I think it's more or less before. Even I could not really tell like when exactly was, but you know, it because of my background. So I like, you know, as an international student, I've always been interested in multicultural and like how people of different culture learn and present themselves, things like that. Yeah, and then how instructor like from a certain culture, like from this mainstream culture, how they respond to that. So yes, it's been an interest since before my UH time.
One of your members, Dr. Nimi's interest is multicultural. She's got the MOOCs book with me. I know she's a multicultural person. Was she on your committee? Or
Who was that?
Dr. Lee? Mimi?
Oh, Mimi Lee, yes, she's my methodologist.
Okay, and she's interested in multicultural ed too, I know.
Right, I know. Yeah, she is. Yeah. It's funny. She was in California when I did my defense, and she said like she's the first one from California who congratulates me on the PhD. So it was funny. Yeah. So as I mentioned, you have this slide, so I'm gonna kind of skip to the data, the methodology. Talk a little bit about it.
If you want to just briefly discuss what each slide has, so when they get the slides, they know what these are. So just briefly give us a kind of 5-10 seconds.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I can do that too. So back to types of MOOC, I want to bring to attention like different kinds and the and specify the kind of MOOC in the research paper.
And that was a particular slide that was going in I'm going to do a follow-up lecture, and I just deleted it from my slide deck, that last one from Dr. Reed. So I'm glad you had it on the CMOOCs and PMOOCs.
Okay. Yeah. And then, so the methodology, to collect the data. So, so the study was on MOOC instructors and instructional designer on Coursera platform who taught at least one MOOC in the past or by the time the research was conducted. So the way we did was I went to Coursera back when I did with my my classmate. So we really scanned through Coursera platform, focus on the US, and really went through each and every schools and try to get the name of the instructor who offer the MOOCs, and we found their personal page, and we reached out to them and invite them to the interview. So that's what we did. So we narrowed down from 200 something participants, and then fast forward, 15 people agreed to participate. Some kind of did not respond for some reason, like absolute email, or some refuse. And like, for example, a professor from Stanford say, there's no multicultural in my MOOC. I'm teaching computer science, so everyone has to come up to their scientific language and curriculum. So there's no such thing as cultural accommodation. So he refused. And I have some people who say that, well, I love to, but you know, I don't have the necessary expertise or experience to participate. So thanks, but no thanks. So I triangulated the interview that I had with the course content or syllabus that they provide on Coursera. So it's and then the artifacts, and it's kind of pretty rigorous, I would say, in terms of like the data. So results. As I mentioned, from 249 participants, we have like 15 people who participated in the interview, and the interview was like 45 to 60 minutes, and I had like follow-up email or interview with them when I had like some more questions. And there's a kind of interest, and these people, I might say, they're amazing. Like, they're super busy, and most of them, they did MOOCs like on top of their already very busy schedule, and they did it as like a gift to the community. They didn't get paid to do it on release time whatsoever, but they kind of willing to give me a time, like to a stranger, right, a student. And one time I failed to record a section from this biology professor from Duke University, and I asked if he could do it again so I could back up with some questions, and he did. So he gave me 2 hours. It's pretty neat. Yeah. So so these people, these 15 people, they represented a very diverse set of institutions and organizations from public and private universities, as you will see in a second here. And so I have documented here, you know, their academic rank, year of experience, and in the institution that they belong to, their research interests, and the MOOCs that they offer. So you can see that from the paper or from the slides. So among these 15 instructors, they played various roles of giving instruction and course design in the MOOC, and like this. So they could be a course coordinator, like participants number 7. So I number them from 1 to 15, right? A course designer, all of them. A course liaison, for example, participant 5. So this person, he was an instructional designer, and he put together a MOOC from University of Michigan and University of Maryland on design, on survey design methods for this campus, and it's like a task for their online course in the future. So usually we have like online and we went to MOOC, but here they did the other way around. So yes, and admin, a teacher, etc. So this is an interesting part here. Aspects of course design that address multicultural learners' needs, as I mentioned. So we triangulated the interview research with results with the course syllabus and all the artifacts I found on Coursera, and this is an example. So the category that I had for this course was like the multicultural accommodation was categorized into language support and course format. And basically all these courses, they have almost all the components of support in terms of language and course format for the students.
And I'll get back to that after your talk about language translation with our research that we've done too. So all of that language translation, it looked like the box was checked.
Okay, so yeah, feel free to go back and dip into that. But and then expectations and reality of MOOC learners' background. So interestingly, they share with me that, you know, like they have certain expectations on the background, and they have some, you know, like imagination or guessing of who the learners might have been. And this is the reality of who they were, right? So in a lot of cases, it was like a massive difference, and they had to adjust their course like as they went along. Which is like usually the reality was more surprising and more diverse than what they have expected before. For example, course 2 and 3, the Intro to Human Physiology, taught by 2 professors at Duke University. So they expected student with biological background, anyone interested within their campus. That's like the unspoken implication. But then they have like students with all sorts of background here, and they actually wrote a paper on that, and you could find here. So they document, the diversity and how the student perform differently. So next, their perceptions and instructional strategy. So this is like a map that can show you like, the themes that I came up, that I kind of categorized them into. Basically, their perceptions of diversity were kind of multi-dimensional, which I would go in a second. And then there were 3 themes for their strategies applied to the MOOC: language, content, and engagement. So, theme 1, language support. So language plays a role in the MOOC learning outcomes. I mean, obviously, because they have like a lot of global learners who are non-native speaker of English, and they have like I feel like a lot of participants, and you see here, actually almost all of them have some sort of language support strategies for these learners in one way or the other. So Curt, do we have time to play like a part of the interview? Would you?
Let's play it. That would be useful, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess there's just a couple of things that we did.
Yes.
One is that we made sure that we included notes that go along with our videos.
Ah, yes.
And so it's not a transcript of our video, but it is kind of put in a different way because it's written like you would write a book chapter.
Yeah. So they had those.
How did you do those? Those are interviews, or were they Zoom, or what?
We did Skype a lot of times, and I did not use Zoom at that time, but Skype, yes. And then the second one is content support. So they also show very dynamic concerns regarding the students' content comprehension, especially those who did not have the required background, as we knew that like MOOCs were kind of implied for college students who had actually some necessary background knowledge, some college experience, right? But I mean, so for these students who did not have those prerequisite or non-native speaker, there were a lot of content support strategies for this that targeted on these 2 groups of learners. So I have some example here, and this is a little bit long, but it's from 3 professors at UCSD, University of California in San Diego, and they teach computer science courses and coding. But I was surprised that they were very accommodating in a very cultural and emotional way. So the reality of your student body and the intent to which the course was designed for. So the course designed for the intermediate level, and you say there's some differences with the actual student body. In what way does your curriculum deal with this difference or the diversity among the populations in terms of the students' place of origin and their programming background?
Okay, so there's, I guess we deal with those 2 things differently with different approaches. So for programming background, I mentioned these self-test quizzes that we incorporate, and then we also have the support videos that are intended to give additional scaffolding to people who come in from less background in programming. And so the idea is that we structure our videos as core videos that we really expect most people will want to watch, that hit at the core content that we are teaching and that will be required for the programming assignments, which are the summative assessments at the end of each module of the course and at the course itself. And then we we expect that most people will watch the core videos, but we don't go into very many examples or very many hints on the programming assignments in the core videos, but we do have support videos which do just that, which help people really get started with the programming assignments, which help address the common misconceptions and common mistakes. And so we have those additional videos for people who choose and who want it. And then we also have a sequence of videos that are called concept challenge videos. They're really special, and we also address the fact that people come in from different backgrounds. And in the concept challenge videos, we pose a pretty challenging question, ask the students to reply to see if they can answer the question. So it's multiple choice. And then before we reveal the correct answer, we show them a segment of 3 UCSC students discussing that question. And in that question, they raise some of the common misconceptions around that question. They think about what might be true, what might be false. And what's important about these these discussions is that it's spoken by really so they're good qualified students, but they're still novice learning that subject, and so they're speaking with novice language. And then we have the question posed again, and we poll the Coursera learners and ask them what they think the correct answer is at that point. And then after that, we do a wrap-up segment of video where one of the 3 instructors says what the correct answer was and why. And we really model this around peer instruction, which is a very interesting and heavily studied modality of teaching computer science. And so in the computer science.
Okay. So, and this is short.
We knew, again, because we could see who was signing up. Coursera is very good about providing rich detail on who the participants are. We knew that, like I said, 75% of the students came from outside of the U.S. So what we did is we tried to utilize examples that were multicultural. If we showed a picture of something, rather than show a picture of the Empire State Building, which is a famous building in the United States, we showed a picture of the Taj Mahal, for example, or the Eiffel Tower, thinking that it might be more recognizable. Or we tried to do things that were more global and not just focused on the U.S.
Yeah. So Curt, you know who
I know who that is.
Yeah. So this is actually our course, Digital Storytelling, that I was part of the team. And this is under, as you can see on the point of simplify the content or using internationalized content or examples. Yeah, so we try to shy away from the US and, try to make it more international. And another, which is the last theme, is engagement facilitation. So similarly, they show dynamic concerns regarding patterns of engagement of learners of different ethnicity and educational background. And by the way, Curt, I have a paper on digital storytelling that talked exactly about the students' patterns of engagement, and that was affected by the students' motives of taking the course, their background, and things like that. So I can send you a paper on that, just a backup example. Yeah, but they also employ a lot of engagement facilitation strategies for the student, and this is an example.
There are other aspects that you probably have heard about.
And by the way, this is a professor who teaches cosmology at Caltech, like the Institution of Technology in California. It's like the MIT in the West.
Which is, there are multiple components to education. Content delivery is one of them, and MOOCs have definitely solved that in terms of scalability.
Right.
But anything that requires human interaction doesn't scale because humans don't obey Moore's law. And so there is student-to-student interaction and student-to-teacher interaction. And so we're limited by the human bandwidth. Now, students have sort of kind of solving this in a grassroots fashion by having discussions on the online forums. And I think that's good. I've tried different varieties of interacting with students. They certainly appreciate the answering questions on forums. I tried Facebook, Google Hangout, virtual worlds, and nothing has quite really caught on yet. But I think that will be another major issue for the educational industry to sort out how to provide the human interaction experience where knowledge really gets to gel.
All right. Yes. So some challenges, some pedagogical challenges in addressing these learners' need in a MOOC include, these are, as I mentioned, they had to adjust the course as they went because of all this constant change or the very diverse student body that they had. So subject related, they reported that, some topic, some subject triggers controversy and even hostile feeling among, participants, like from different parts of the world. I believe I mentioned some examples in one of the courses. And so the instructor had to go in and kind of try to consolidate the conflicts, and they try to constantly remind the student that, hey, this is a course and we discuss the topics. Let's be objective and let's be focused on the topic itself and be respectful and things like that. And there were cases that they had to come and delete some hostile comments or some irrelevant points, for example. And some topics kind of trigger some confusion. And one example was there's a course on cataract, intro to cataract, and offered by, I believe, a University of Michigan. And so the professor she was trained to practice cataract and to teach the student in the US. So she came to the MOOC with that mindset and soon realized that, the students were from different parts of the world, and then she was confused as, hey, if they had the same equipment or if they had the same concept and things like that. So she's like, if I did it again, then I had to kind of examine this issue and kind of dive more into the differences among the students in terms of how they came to prepare for the course. And then, and another example, again, back to our digital storytelling course, where the instructor experienced some challenges on incorporating the educational purposes to the story, because it means different things to different people, and kind of everyone has a story to tell, but then sometimes they had like issues of rationalizing the purpose. So peer feedback, time efficiency and the quality, they say that they got like also multi-dimensional comments from the student on the quality of the peer feedback, as you can imagine, and the time efficiency is voluntary and you cannot really put a deadline on the student. And the third one is instructors' expertise and exposure to global audience and online interaction. So challenge to communicate with the learners online and with their needs and what are the applicable values of what they learn, and those are some examples of the struggle they have. And as I mentioned earlier, the time commitment was a big issue for them too. Like MOOC was like a task, an additional task on top of what they were doing. And a lot of them kind of imply that, the university should have like a better compensation or policy so that, they could spend more, they could focus more on the MOOC design and things like that. So some implication for practice, which was like 2 years ago that the resource, the implications were written. So I believe Curt maybe is, you can give an update version of this. So my other MOOC works include impact of MOOCs on online learning and campus-based course design, resulting from part of my dissertation research data, right? So a lot of people, you know, when you ask them one thing, they tell you more about some other. So that was really a blessing. So I got enough of insight to talk about this. So it was really nice, and it was really a new revenue for me. And as Curt mentioned, the emotional benefits of diversity in MOOC and how MOOCs really reshape views of online education for the instructor by their exposure to the learners. So these two papers, the first two papers are kind of, you know, like they complement each other in a way. Yeah. So not only they apply the MOOC skills, expertise, or perspective into their campus teaching, but also emotionally, it somehow changed his instructor for the better. And then the paper, I'm working with one of your students now, Meina, Curt, is the journey to MOOC by pre and in-service teachers. So I also have the, so this was for the student in my credential, in my Master of Ed program. So the student take a course in application of technology across curricular. And then I had them take a MOOCs, and I asked them to write a MOOC review, and they could choose any MOOC that they want to take, and then they write the MOOC review that focus on, you know, describing their engagement with the course content and their evaluation with the course quality, and most importantly, their takeaway as a learner. So this study documents the journey to MOOCs by this very specific, you know, group of audience who are curious, who are very purposeful and insightful learners, and they're exposed to the MOOC for the first time, and how MOOC attribute to their personal and professional growth.
So Meina is the TA for the face-to-face section of this class. Someone will be watching this, and she'll be showing up shortly for my section and for a Q&A later on. She's at lunch right now.
Yeah, she told me that she might make it, but yeah, she's we're writing this together, so you can ask her. She can tell you more about it. Yeah, and my other, any questions so far on MOOC? Because the next one would be something else.
Well, so the next what would be something else? The next.
We're talking about my other research, right?
Oh, okay. So yes, let's stop here for a second, because I got both your papers open, and let's see if Parama, Jalin, Julia, Maurice have a question for you, or anyone else who might be watching.
Okay.
So let's stop for a second here. We've got 15 minutes or so left.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because there has been like 2 or 3 of, like, you know, online courses or MOOCs that I have enrolled in. But I wanted to understand that if there is a multicultural audience, I understand that there is a responsibility on the part of the instructor, you know, to incorporate certain instructional strategies to make it more successful or culturally sensitive. But what if I know as a student that I am part of a multicultural group, then what are the strategies I should bring into the, you know, into the environment, learning environment, to make it, because I know, I mean,
I see what you mean, and I like the question. I think, yes, it's a two-way. I thought about exactly the same. It should not be just the instructor trying to accommodate, identify, but what are the responsibilities and the contribution of the learner as well, right?
Exactly.
So, so one thing, one benefit drawing from this diverse student body is the diverse, pools of insights and ideas and perspective from the student. So, that as a student, that is the very thing that you can contribute. And I would say, in terms of perspective, if the objectivity and being neutral and being open-minded, are very important as a learner. And of course, like open-minded here also means culturally sensitive.
Culturally
right?
sensitive, yes.
Yes. Yeah, so you can adopt like a student version of faculty's insight and perception. Like you can kind of, in a way, mirror what they do, the process that they went through, right? But in terms of, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, because that is what I always wonder about. Like it's
definitely. And I appreciate the question. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, Parama, I just sent a handout from our research, and Paul Kim has a chapter in my MOOCs book. If you look at that handout, look at what Paul Kim says his students did in his MOOCs to support each other. That would be an addition to what Dr. Phan has said here.
Okay.
So I would look at that one in particular, from the student point of view of how they translated content and made lower bandwidth versions of videos to support people from less advantaged parts of the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's what I meant by the student version of what the faculty did, because faculty also, they had this offline meeting, right, with student geographically proximity. So yeah, I guess the students were doing the same.
Yeah, because I don't know if I missed it in your slides, but I think a mention of, when the instructor is also cognizant of the fact that there would be difference in bandwidth problems, so giving some extra time for work and stuff like that. I think that would help, students who are from the, developing world, or, where, internet speed or things like that are not up to the mark.
Right.
Yeah.
And another thing is those who had like limited language competencies. For example, another strategy which I did not include in the interview example show was they allow the student to turn in the work in their own language. So for example, the course at UC San Diego, the student were allowed to submit the work in their own language, and the peer feedback was subject to having someone else turning in that language. So if I'm the only one who turned in my work in Vietnamese, I might suffer from not having a peer feedback. But but I always have the choice to submit in English and have peer feedback.
Yeah.
So the student did have a choice and options.
By the way, I saw you walking through what you're in that special house there of a special person.
Yeah, did you tell them? Like,
so I didn't tell them now. Indirectly I told everyone. So we had Cassandra Brooks a couple weeks ago, if you all remember, as our guest in this class. Well, she's staying at a house of the person I originally asked to come that night, and that is Jean Pennycook, who is a famous penguin researcher.
She's very Googleable, so you can try her. Yeah, she's.
She was flying from Antarctica to the Arctic Circle with a tour group at the time or something, right, Trang?
Yeah.
So we couldn't get her, but we did try. But you're staying. You're monitoring her house, sort of, right? While she's in the Antarctic.
Yeah, the penguin house. Everything is penguin.
Everything's penguins in there.
Okay. Well, do we have some more time to talk about some other things, or is there any other questions about MOOC?
So I did actually have a question, because I read through your paper prior to this session, and on the page where it's talking about the implications, a line jumped out at me. It said, MOOCs will probably never be one-size-fits-all courses due to their unconformable body of learners, right? Because like the students themselves can be from so many different backgrounds, so many different so many different parts of the world. And it kind of and I was just sitting there with it a little bit, and I kind of was going down a bit of a rabbit hole of how do you find that balance? Like, do you end up simplifying things like in terms of like the culture that's like baked into what's being taught. So like, because like you obviously want to simplify things so that everyone can relate. Because like if you end up going at too much of like a Western perspective, then those that aren't familiar with the Western cultural perspective are gonna miss out. So so is the idea that like you want to simplify things so that everyone can access it? Or do you do something where it's you have different buckets of like, oh, this is this MOOC through a Western cultural perspective, or this is this MOOC through like an Asian cultural perspective, or this is a MOOC like, like, how do you address that?
I see. That's an interesting question. And I thought of that. And honestly, I don't think I have a final answer to that because, again, it's very different per course. And I might say that even in a face-to-face course, you have the student from California. They're different every semester. So let alone people you meet online and people from, all over the world. So, but back to your question, how it balanced it. So that conclusion was from the data of these 15 people. And I saw like this major diversity in the ways that they address the needs. And the balance thing, I think, it's probably kind of contextualized in the course. For example, the digital storytelling course, yes, the instructor tried to grab examples from here and there and not just try to grab in the US. But for example, some other courses like that are more like the cataract course or the like more strictly scientific course. Like I think the instructor need to dig a little bit more into how it is in other culture before they can give the example. So.
I really like that suggestion of like just providing a lot of different cultural examples.
Yeah.
Just to give more like option for them to connect with it. I like that.
Yeah.
Sorry for my cat.
No, it's all right. What's her name?
His name is Max. Max, if you want to come say hi. Max.
Okay, hi Max.
Maurice also wants to know how to get into the doctoral program at the University of Houston, but you guys can talk offline about that. Okay. I can share your email and you can chat more. He's in the certificate program here at IU in our learning science program. So
yeah, I love my program at U of A. It's really neat, and we have like super faculty members there. I think Sarah McNeil was like one of my favorite persons. Yeah.
Sarah McNeil is who she's referring to. And what part of the city do you live in, Maurice? What's the section of town?
So I live like just north of, like right next to I-10 and I-45.
Oh, cool. When are you thinking of applying?
So I'm initially looking at doing a, because I want to start with a master's program. So right now I'm looking at master's programs at U of H. So ideally for this fall.
Okay, cool.
Application is June 1, so we'll see what happens.
Yes, yeah. Go right in. Yes. Well, fingers crossed. Let me know if you get in. Yeah. Yay. All right.
So I've got a question. You've got two things that you got out of your dissertation. It's always good to get 2 or 3 things out of a dissertation. And when we first talked, you were like asking, well, how can I do this? I've already published this. How do you see these 2 manuscripts as different and aligned, yet similar? I mean, what's unique? What creative things did you get in the second paper that weren't in the first paper?
You mean the first one, the one that we talked here?
So the one that's assigned this week, we kind of went through, but you have a chapter in my upcoming book.
Yeah.
And you got permission from the journal to include some things that were in both, so some quotes and things. How did you fashion the chapter to be distinct from? Can you give advice about what you did?
You mean the chapter in your
right.
Yeah. So good questions. So I think this paper, the one we just talked about, was like the focus on the strategies and the pedagogy challenges. So it's more towards like subject related versus the book chapter that in your book. It gears towards more the emotional benefits of the instructor. So like what were the emotional gains that these instructor and instructional designer had, like during when they did what they did. Yeah. So they are related in a way. I mean, they like stem from the same data collection, data pool, but then it's two separate things.
So the first one, you talk about using Google Hangouts, meet and greets, multiple discussion forums, a Facebook page, language support, translations, study guides, PowerPoint stuff. All those are instructional strategies or structural approaches that you can include. And I think Meina, in her study of self-directed learning in MOOCs, and she's interviewed 22 instructors per dissertation, has kind of found a set of things like that. And I think the two of you work together, you might think about merging those implications, or, you know, to create a guide for people teaching MOOCs. That might be a follow-up to what you're currently working on. Let's see, well, I wanted to ask something else about this. So working with instructors and interviewing instructors, I'm reading the transcripts now of Meina's 22 studies. It's like being a kid in a candy store. It's like, if you're interested in learning, interviewing MOOC instructors is just like a peak experience. It's a fun thing to do, because you're learning about all these, whether it's cosmology or cell biology or the genome projects. It's intergalactic astronomy. You had somebody in neurobiology. I mean, this is like, wow, you know?
Yeah.
It's a cool thing. I mean, were you, I mean, you had to be really excited to do this project, but then when you interview people, you had to even come out even more excited. And when you're talking about...
Yeah, I felt totally immersed in the project, and to the point, like, that's probably one of the best research study for me, because I think I still like the subject, obviously, and that already means something. Like, after 3 years, when you think about it, I still feel I still love the subject. And yes, when I talk to people, I mean, the way they spoke about their class and the questions sometimes trigger some excitement, and it really, you know, encouraged them to tell more. And, you know, we educators, we try to do good, and we try to give to the community. So I feel like the questions kind of touch the points, and it's really, and it's make people wanted to share more. And I feel like it benefits both of us, like me and the interviewee, because like when we share and we share some you know, like some mutual interest on the student and things like that, and I'm like, wow, I didn't know that you did that, or, you know, things like that. So it's really a very happy thing, and it just got better after each conversation. And I think I gained more experience too. Like, at first it was very mechanical for me, because I was like trying to cover all the questions. But then towards the end, after like 15 interviews, I felt like I became more natural and could just chat and outside of my my protocol, and could really pull out more stories from them. And that really helps with your book chapter, actually. So I could kind of pick between the lines to get the emotional parts out of it. Yeah. So for me, that was something I value, I treasure. Yeah.
Well, I noticed when I visited there, you were stacking up articles on MOOCs. I mean, you were reading a lot and you were sharing. We shared back and forth. That might have been 3 years ago or whenever that was. I was impressed. This is a difficult field to keep on top of, though, to understand what's all going on. It is really, it's not an easy thing, right? So are you keeping up, or are you moving on to other things, or are you doing both?
I'm doing both, but I have to be honest with you, it's kind of hard to keep up the way I did in the past. Before, I felt like I breathe, I live, I breathe MOOC every day, like, and my everyday was like literally means every day. And now my everyday is teacher education, and we don't do MOOCs here. So, but I feel like it's a love that I had, a few years ago, and I want to keep it. So that's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to incorporate it in my current course, and I want to write about it. And I took every chance I could to talk to my current students about MOOC and encourage them to try, and then want to hear about their reflections on it. And
you can supplement with MOOCs. You can have flipped classroom with MOOCs. You can extend your classes using MOOCs in a normal class. So, right? Are you doing some of that?
I did so far. The only thing I did was ask the student to pick a MOOC and
to follow a MOOC or take a MOOC as an assignment, as a possible assignment. I'm doing that in this class, or as an option.
Yeah.
If they finish it, they can replace an assignment, write reflection.
Yeah.
2 questions before you go. These 2 quick ones. We're at 2 o'clock here. It's 11 o'clock by you, or 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock by you. Did you have a backup plan if you didn't get a job in a university? What would you have done if you hadn't gotten the job in Fresno? What was your backup plan?
That's a good question, and I could tell you the story what I did actually. So I really wanted to dive into this MOOC research, and so I contacted George Simmons at UT Arlington, and I actually met with him, and we talked about MOOC pedagogy and my research, and I presented my computers education paper, which was like my pride. And so we talked about that, and he invited me to another showcase that they had with Stephen Downs.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that postdoc position did not work out because of with the paperwork, my student visa at that time. I mean, they couldn't sponsor it. So but I would have probably I would have been very interested in a postdoc position to really keep up with this, because I really like it.
So he had a postdoc? He actually had one available, or he was thinking about making one?
He was he was thinking about it, and he asked me how am I available and willing to relocate and things like that. And
so students who are watching this video, George Simmons taught the first MOOC. I showed him briefly in the face-to-face class last week. When he was in Canada, he did it. He's moved down to University of Texas at Arlington, and so and Stephen Downs is still back in Canada, and the 2 of them work to teach that first MOOC. So that's where this all comes together. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. My other question is, can you tell us now you've transitioned into this new entity and you're being asked to do other kinds of research. You want to briefly talk about a couple of the projects, research or curriculum or pedagogical things you're doing there before you go?
Yes. So half of my job at Fresno State is to manage this Instructional Technology Resource Center, or INRS for short, right? And the other half is teaching and research and doing services, providing services like any other faculty member. So I have half teaching load and the other half for that. So within that director position, so my roles include like overseeing technology integration in the classroom and have trained faculty on the use of tech in the classroom and across curriculum and things like that. So within the last few years, I had a survey study on how the School of Education faculty use technology to enhance student-centered learning. And so I think student-centered learning is my new arena now, like my new track. And then part of that, like the personalized learning initiative that we did with Microsoft. But back to student-centered learning, using technology. I think that is like the backbone, that I feel like that's the language we speak every day as Fresno State. So I'm happy that I kind of finally get touched to it. And then related, in my other course for liberal studies student, the undergrad who in the teacher education, they are they're taking this technology course as a prerequisite to their credential program. And so I apply this human-centered design approach to their, to their course, to the project-based course that they're taking with me. And the rationale was like, that is a skills-based course, but with this rapid development of technology, like if you teach them a tool or a set of tools now, chance for them to use in 2 years from now is very low, because absolutely right. But if you teach them the skills to really to critical thinking skill and decision making, and now even like the skill to be agile and to be flexible and adaptive and confronting changes, that's really a new set of skills to learn, because like it's changing so fast, right? So this human-centered design approach with with modification from the D school, but it really taught the student to learn to fail. Like I'm telling them that I'm teaching you guys to fail, and to face risk, to be calculated risk takers, and to embrace hi Meina, to embrace ambiguity and to embrace empathy to the audience. So for example, if you develop a project to the audience, that could be parents of the low-income students who want to help their kids with school, but they don't have access to their kids' school. So in order to do that, you really have to go offline and really interview these people, have to listen to them and kind of, show your empathy, like show your understanding and value their insights, their needs, and, and then you process all the feedback and try to find solutions. So you start with a lot of possible solutions, and you work and you try it out, you fail, you try it again, you fail until you get to the best one, you think.
So you go here in a few minutes, but Meina, she just talked about her backup plan and looking at postdoc. If she hadn't got this job, she had interviewed with George Siemens for a postdoc at University of Texas at Arlington. So yeah.
I'm not sure if that's a whole lot to share. I mean, like, but I'm happy to talk about any, early career-wise, if you guys need.
So there's our snow, Jalin showing us, as you can see there. So, as you can see, we're getting hit with a little bit of snow. It's not, this is not the mountains or anything. But.
Yeah. It's nice, yeah.
So so final thing, you're very young to be running a center. They took a lot of risk, I think, sort of grabbing someone right out of graduate school and running a center. Was that stressful to know that that you're in charge of this interest area, and it's, It
was. Oh my gosh, it's definitely was. It's a lot of work, a lot of details, and a lot of work, a lot of things to learn too, right? And the challenge for me was also to shift from scholar to management, and I have to do that every day. So, as half of the job, when I'm running around to help with the center and details, I'm like, okay, what did I accomplish today? Did I write something? Did I read something? So I, sometimes I felt a little bit behind or guilty on the research part. And if I closed the door and did the research for the whole day or a few days, then I feel like, did I really, catch up with my management job? So it's really a constant run in between, but I'm getting used to it in a way.
Yeah.
And just like a personal note, like when when they recommended me for the job, and one concern they had that I did not have management experience, and the search committee chair say, how would you have experience without starting the job? So yeah, I think that was really something major, and I think I learned that, and I try to project that attitude towards my future student. Yeah.
Well, I think you need to go because you have a meeting in 15 minutes or 20 minutes. You have a 15-minute ride, so you know, or 10-minute ride. So I think unless we have anything pressing or really critical here, I want to thank you for your time here on a Sunday at the last minute. So this is perfect for 3 reasons. Number one, what you talked about leads exactly to this topic, what I'm going to be talking about. And so it's a nice match. So there you go, right there, you know. Secondly, it's, you know, vibrant, it's new, it's recent, and you're publishing a lot. And I do want to get that Computers in Ed article to share with people. So we'll talk online. I want to get your CV. I'll send you a note.
I can send you a copy of the Computers in Education paper. Yeah,
I probably have it somewhere, but I don't see it in the file I put for you. So, and so that's the second thing. Third, it's really good to have a younger person who's accomplished a lot early in the career, and can, you know, so people who are in our program can see what it's like to transition into an area like this. So that's another, and actually fourth, your article's assigned this week. And so you are it. So that's a perfect fit, you know. So
yeah, it's an honor to be invited and to talk to you all and share whatever experience I have. So thank you for having me.
Let's give her a round of applause. And
thank you, Trang.
Thank you very much. Meina, did you want to say anything before she goes?
Yeah, I have already emailed her. I'm sorry I missed the first part. I tried to join the later part. Good to see you.
Yeah. Dr. Bonk recorded it, right, Curt?
Yeah, it's being recorded.
Yeah, I was watching the recording.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trang.
Yeah.
You need to exit. We're going to stay around here. So we'll talk, and maybe we'll see you at AERA.
Yeah, all right, maybe. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Talk to you online. Okay, so we have a couple choices here. We can go right into my talk, or we can take a quick 2-minute break and refresh a little bit. I think it might be beneficial to take just a 2-3 minute quick, not a 10-minute, but just a stretch and then come back, and I'll present for about a half hour, and then we'll do a Q&A for about 50 minutes to be done by 3 o'clock. We'll make this a shorter one. I'll do a kind of overview of my research on personalization and cultural sensitivity, and you'll hear from dozens of people who have chapters in my books, my last MOOCs book, on what they say about cultural sensitivity in MOOCs and personalization. The handout that I sent to all of you about an hour before we started, or a few minutes before we started, I'm basically going to walk through that handout and then get to our study on personalization, of which Meina and I last week presented pieces of it. So I caught and deleted things that we've already talked about and included some things that we hadn't talked about. And there may be a little bit of overlap. So you may have seen a couple things, but I think it's better to repackage it here. And then we're going to open up for any MOOC questions at all. So let's take just maybe 2-minute, I'll take a 2-minute break. Meina, maybe if he just arrived, why don't you talk while I'm gone a bit about what you're finding in your dissertation research about personalization or cultural sensitivity, or addressing people in the developing parts of the world, which is the topic for this week. Is there anything that you might, and if not, you can take a break too, but I
think other students, maybe they want to take a break, so we can take a break first.
Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, back. Took me a couple more minutes than what I thought. Meina. Hello. So what Trang presented was very helpful. Oh, we've got a picture. Campus view. Thanks, Jalen. Or is that you, Meina, who posted? Who did that?
Darling.
Okay. He's our artist.
Yeah, just say, don't even think about the snow day.
It's a snow day on a Sunday, so no one gets the day off of school. We just enjoy the snow. My backwoods, it's beautiful back here. So let's take a look at, so that was really appropriate. And many weeks we have a guest coming in who doesn't match the topic of the week. I just grab someone and they're there, you know. But this week it was sort of purposeful to have Dr. Phan come in because she's fits the topic of the week and has done research here. And this is a new and emerging area of MOOCs, alone, but MOOCs in the developing world or emerging economies, even more so. But when doing our MOOCs and Open Education Around the World book, we had a chance to interview some of the people writing for that book and what they had to say. So let me give you a perspective on that. I'm going to share my screen, but I'm also going to maybe show a couple quick videos pieces just to see some people and hear from some people. And let's go to, I have to find the, well, I have to see if yeah, it should be there. Sometimes it's hard to find in sharing my screen. There it is. So I'm sharing this now, I think. So if I click, and I may have to actually preload the videos before I can share them. I don't think I can click and share. So let me go back. Bear with me a second. I didn't load these ahead of time. So let me open this one up. If it opens. And okay, and then I've got another one to open. And then I've got another one to open. Maybe. And one last one to open. This one here. Okay. Bear with me 9 seconds.
You can go first. Don't just get away. Come together. Book now to save up to 25%.
Innovating Education Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.
Okay. Do you all see this screen? I can't hear anyone, but maybe I can get the chat window.
We can only hear the audio. We couldn't see any video here.
Open. Can't see it. Okay. So let me stop sharing. And now let me share again. Optimize audio and video. Share. Let's see. Can you hear and see?
Online courses or MOOCs first emerged.
Could you hear that and see that or not?
Yeah, we can hear that and also see the screen. Because it's very small.
Okay, I'll make
hope that they would revolutionize learning by opening up information to people around the world. In this report, we revisit the topic to see if they've lived up to the hype. For a long time, traditional education has reigned in China, but today growing numbers of people are using MOOCs. In this report, we have a look at one successful site that is offering versatile content from elite international institutions.
For Feng Chao, Sunday mornings are not only about rest and chatting with family members. This Shanghai-based social media manager is passionate about many topics, from technical innovations to management methods. Every weekend, she logs into NetEase Open Course, or NOCs, an online education platform established in 2010, which had 50 million visits last year alone.
I'm currently watching a movie-making class. There are lots of interesting courses here. Some of them explain how Hollywood makes its special effects. These topics interest me a lot, but I don't have the opportunity to study them in good universities or any other way. NetEase Open Course is a good platform for me to get knowledge for free on the internet during my free time, whenever I want.
More than 20,000 lectures, talks or classes from some of the world's best universities have so far been put online. Users watch them on their way to work or while exercising, thanks to NOC's hugely popular mobile app. The platform increasingly widens educational materials available to Chinese students in a country where teaching methods are still very conservative.
With this platform, we can learn and see many new things from the whole world. Different opinions, different points of view. All this nourishes our brain, and this enrichment is as important as exercising our body.
NetEase Open Course has its headquarters in the high-tech city of Hangzhou, near Shanghai. Over the past 5 years, it has built partnerships with foreign universities such as Oxford, Yale and Cambridge, and also Coursera, a massive American website that hosts open online courses.
On average, users are between 18 and 35 years old. They're mostly university students or freshly graduated. These users have three purposes when they use an NOC. They first want to get knowledge all along their life. They also want to get new skills they can directly use in their work. Then, they just want to learn for leisure.
But what makes the NetEase course unique is its translation system. Most videos are subtitled in Chinese, thanks to people such as Alan Lai. Alan is from Shanghai, but studied for 2 years in the UK. He's now part of a huge volunteer translators network set up by NOC. Over the past 5 months, he's been translating a Harvard program whenever he has free time.
The name of the course is Psychology of Leadership, and we have a group of people, about 24 volunteers, translating this together. And we will translate one class a week, and then we'll put it online. Okay, I chose this topic because I can improve my English, and psychology is my interest. It's very useful for my career. And the professor in this course is very famous at Harvard University in the psychology field.
Now, when I heard this, I was so relieved. My classmate got an arsonist for her first client.
In just a few years, the NetEase Open Course has succeeded in building a community of learners for which language or government control are no longer an obstacle when it comes to getting access to knowledge.
One of the main criticisms of MOOCs is a very high dropout rate. So what makes one MOOC successful while many others are abandoned? Will online courses ever live up to our initial expectations? We find out in the UK.
Lithuanian single mother Svetlana moved to the UK 5 years ago. She works long hours at a care home near London, but squeezes in time to improve her English. Svetlana is studying via a MOOC developed by the British Council that's preparing her for the IELTS test, the gateway to entering higher education.
I have to challenge myself. That's why I decided to go to university and study business and law. Before, I just needed to take this course. So every morning I'm dropping my daughter in school, later I'm coming back home, I'm just having my laptop in the sitting room, I'm having my cup of coffee, and I'm studying.
Svetlana is one of a staggering 35 million people worldwide who signed up to MOOCs last year. But unlike Svetlana, the vast majority of people, more than 90% in fact, who sign up for these free online courses don't complete them. Some underestimate the amount of work involved, while others realize quickly that the course they picked isn't for them. Educational expert Charles McIntyre says it's unfair for critics to look at the dropout numbers and say that MOOCs are failing.
MOOCs have just arrived on the scene. They've only been around for a few years. And the fact that people, try it and taste it and then decide subsequently they don't want to finish that particular course, I think just reflects the fact that there's an exploration going on. And that exploration points to a new world that's happening in learning, and we're very much at the kind of ground floor of that.
Let's see what some
The attractiveness of course content and the usability of the online platform distributing the course are key to making a MOOC successful. The British Council's Understanding IELTS, which is on the Future Learn platform, has been hugely popular, with 700,000 students signing up for the 2 courses run over the last year. Around 10% of those completed.
Just listen and no, stop, I haven't got some answers, but it's only
sometimes, yeah.
So my advice is to stay.
The British Council has been stunned by the popularity of the course and says the biggest reason for this lies not in what they did, but in what the students have been doing themselves.
A lot of people said to us at the beginning, online learning, a MOOC for English, are you serious? I don't think that can work. How can you teach English through a MOOC? And what we found is that the students taught each other, mentored each other, used the tools, used the techniques, used the materials, but they built the communities.
Svetlana agrees. She studies at home, but she's not alone. She says chatting with her online classmates around the world is a big motivating factor in keeping her on track. Dedicated to her studies amid an already very busy family and work life.
Have you ever taken an online course? What was it? Was it a success? Let us know on our social media pages. Until next week, goodbye.
I'm going to stop that one there and just point to these other couple I've queued up. This is Tanaporn Dr. Tol from Thailand, who was a visiting scholar in this couple years ago and also 8 years ago in this class. 8 or 9 years ago, maybe 2010 or 11. She's introducing MOOCs in Thailand. Let's see if she'll play for us here. Come on, Dr. Tol.
สวัสดีค่ะขอต้อนรับเข้าสู่คอร์สออนไลน์ระบบเปิดมหาชนหรือที่รู้จักกันดีในชื่อของ MOOCs ของมหาวิทยาลัยเชียงใหม่ค่ะวันนี้ดิฉันรองศาสตราจารย์ดร.ถนอมพร เลาหะจรัสแสงผู้อำนวยการสำนักบริการเทคโนโลยีสารสนเทศมหาวิทยาลัยเชียงใหม่วันนี้ทำหน้าที่ในการมาแนะนำ MOOC course ล่าสุดนะคะ
I'll stop her there and go to the next one. Just I want to give you a sense that MOOCs are happening around the world.
แล้วเราก็เข้าสู่ช่วงของคำถามรับสมองประลองปัญญากันอีกครั้งหนึ่งนะครับในชั่วโมงการเรียนรู้นี้เนี่ยเราคุยกันมากเลยถึงเจ้า Cloud-based Group นะครับแล้วก็มีตัวอย่างที่ใช้บริการของ Gmail ก็คือ Google Group Google Group ให้พวกเราได้รู้จักกันแบบคร่าวๆแล้วนะครับหรืออาจจะเป็นการยกตัวอย่าง
Stop him there and move to our last one. I think he's in this one too.
สวัสดีค่ะสวัสดีครับยินดีต้อนรับเข้าสู่วิชาที่จะเปลี่ยนทุกชีวิตให้เป็นชีวิตแบบดิจิทัลที่ทันสมัย
เปลี่ยนด้วยประสิทธิภาพและทำได้ไม่ยาก
ในวิชา 21st Century Tools หรือ
การบริหารการสื่อสารและการทำงานร่วมกันด้วยเครื่องมือ Cloud-based แห่งศตวรรษที่ 21 เพื่อเพิ่มประสิทธิภาพการใช้ชีวิตประจำวัน
21st Century Tools for Effective Management, Communication and Collaboration in Everyday Life
อาจารย์แบ๊วศิริรัตน์มัชฌิมาดิโลกค่ะ
อาจารย์ช้างวรสูงดวงจินดาครับ
พวกเรามาจากคณะเทคโนโลยีสารสนเทศมหาวิทยาลัยศรีปทุมค่ะ
เพราะโลกวันนี้ทุกอย่างเปลี่ยนแปลงไปอย่างไม่หยุดยั้งในวิชานี้
Stop that one there. And now I'll stop sharing on the screen. The reason to show those is to put you in the shoes of people who are hearing English MOOCs and don't understand English. Now you're hearing Thai MOOCs, you don't understand Thai, maybe you don't understand Chinese. So what can we do in terms of addressing people who are getting course delivery in their non-native language? And the handout that I gave to all of you, or sent to all of you, has many tips and advices. I'm going to go through some of them now. Try to go through them relatively expediently so you can get a sense of what people say who have been delivering MOOCs around the world, some of their advices. It also, part of this talk or part of this presentation will get you exposure to the people who are leaders in this field, people who have been designing MOOCs, delivering MOOCs, evaluating MOOCs, promoting MOOCs, advocating, researching MOOCs, all around the world. I'll briefly be talking about each one of these people that were in my book on MOOCs and open education around the world. And so if I go back up to the beginning here, this talk is on personalizing MOOCs and MOOC insight from experts around planet Earth. So open education, whether you're a UPenn professor like the gentleman there in Philadelphia teaching people from India, Spain, and the Netherlands, or you're me teaching students around the world, and we published a piece in September on personalization of MOOCs with Meina, Anissa Sari, Naja Sabar, Mikyo, and Kim Chu, which Meina and I talked about last week. So whether you have JMOOCs in Japan, KMOOCs in Korea, TMOOCs in Thailand, or actually they're called Thai MOOCs, there are interesting things happening around the world. And you can see in Thailand, they're offering the same kind of courses we do in the US, courses on cybersecurity and open learning and instructional design and rethinking teaching and all sorts of things they are offering in Thailand. Now, Meina, can you hear me okay and see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. And so you can see Dr. To there. Meina, did you meet Dr. To when she was here 2 years ago?
I couldn't remember.
I don't think, she was at IUPUI. I don't think you went up with us that one day. She's in Chiang Mai University. And Dr. Michael there was at Sripatorm in Bangkok. Chiang Mai is in the north. But Thailand is a place that's got a cyber university. And there are folks from the cyber university are writing a chapter for my next book about MOOCs in Thailand. Michael's kind of a character, a funny guy, as you can see here. But when your friends are offering MOOCs, it's kind of an interesting thing. When you see people you know around the world offering MOOCs, whether it's in China, like the video that we had there, we now have The Invasion of the MOOCs. And actually that book, The Invasion of the MOOC, is a free download. This is not a fad anymore. This is a real thing. We got books as our book talking about MOOCs and open education around the world. And we're following it up with a developing economy. And in some parts of the book, we'll talk about cultural sensitivity. Karen Head in chapter 2 of our book talks about hand gestures and be careful pointing your fingers or be careful with body movements and political issues and humor and things like that. Karen Head's at Georgia Tech University in the English department, I believe. And she said many cultures don't have linear forms of thinking, they have non-linear forms of thinking. Sometimes the visuals you use might be problematic, she points out. Miko Aoko from Japan, talks about making subtitles available for your intended audience, and maybe avoiding dates within when you're speaking, avoiding specific dates or current events, because those current events quickly fade in the background to something else. Now, Japan has a problem in that their distance learning her chapter talks about distance learning being traditional correspondence or satellite delivery, and they had a trouble adapting to online. The money from the government was for TV and satellite correspondence and other forms of distance. So they had to modify the funding, and MOOCs were even more of a major modification. Karina Basu from Australia has a chapter in our book as well. She's in Tasmania, the southern part of Australia, and she had created some kind of guides in developing MOOCs in open education and OER in general, and talked about the inclusive nature and the permissions that you need, and the freedoms to translate, freedoms to reuse, freedoms to repackage, freedoms to redistribute. So people who might not have the native language of the content can get it through the repackaging, through the translations, and so forth. In South Africa, Laura Chernusowitz says the most important requirement of a MOOC and MOOC resources is putting them and making them available under an open license to let people rebroadcast, and just like Karina Basu was saying, and to give people some local ownership over the contents, the localization of that content, adapting it how they see fit. Mark Brown in Ireland, who was in New Zealand prior to that, talks about making content available for the indigenous cultures of like the Maori culture in New Zealand or the Aboriginal cultures in Australia. And to be careful, the English dominancy or the Irish dominancy of your language. He's in Ireland now. Amy Woodgate, who's was in Edinburgh, talks about the needing to make the content available for the type of devices that people have, because some things, some people might not have. Like I got my new Samsung 9S last week, they might not have a new phone. So how do you make things available for prior generations of technologies that people might have, and that's all they have? And simple course design, talking heads with minimal hand gestures help makes the contents available for an international audience. It might not be as engaging if it's just talking heads, but at least it gets there. Sanjay Mishra in the Commonwealth of Learning in Vancouver, and I had some of this I presented last week or the week before. I'm just putting it on one talk. Talks about being sensitive in terms of politics, music, pictures, all sorts of things you have to think about, but also making things available for reuse and remix, just like Karina Basu said and Laura C. said from South Africa. Instead of focusing so much on cultural sensitivity of MOOCs and raising costs, try to allow for reuse and remixing so people can create the content for their local culture, make them open. People in Netherlands, the chair of UNESCO's Open Learning, Fred Mulder, says, and his friend Darko Jansen said that we have to be mindful of the people in terms of their age, culture, disability issues, legal differences in terms of reuse of copyright issues in different cultures, the digital learning skills that might vary across cultures, the pedagogical practice that might be common across cultures. Just be mindful of that. Paul Kim, as I mentioned earlier in my handout, talks about, and I'll maybe try and get Paul Kim as a guest in week 14 or week 13 in here to talk about AI or mobile or both. Says encouraging people to download the lecture videos and translating them to the local language. Encouraging people to create low bandwidth versions of videos. Encouraging students to translate and make things more and have meetups where they talk about the contents in their local communities. So localization, localization, localization. The guy on the right, Charlie Chung, helped create Class Central a few years ago. He no longer works at Class Central. He left for another MOOC entity, but Class Central creates reports on the state of MOOCs. He now works for Novo Ed, which spun out of Stanford. Chuck Severance, who teaches one of the top 10 MOOCs, and I think I've shown him previously. He meets his students in cafes and hotels and has meetups and things. He points out to try to avoid metaphors that might be applicable to only one culture. He actually says, don't show the lecturer's face. I kind of disagree. He says use audio only, and then that allows for people to put different audio files for different languages without worrying about matching the lips, things like that. Make slides as free of words as possible, use symbols, use images if possible, but also limit audio. He says no video or keep the video simple. Those are his advices. Sheila Jaganathan at the World Bank says try and address people from other cultures. It's the same thing other people were saying. To try and widen and increase more diverse learners by making it very culturally relevant and sensitive. Well, we've been saying that all along. Soraini Wadi Abbas from Malaysia, now at an open university in Penang, says, be careful with audiences from different parts of the world. In particular, Asia might have different people from Asia, South Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia might have different expectations in terms of when to speak, in terms of how to participate, in terms of how to attend a class, what to do within a class, also minimize distractions with certain, be careful with the kind of videos you show, be careful with even the types of food that might be prohibited or animals might be prohibited in different cultures. Be careful about politics, religion, other things. Belinda Bandelaria says the same thing. Be careful about religion and politics, but also be careful about forms of dress. Also create content in different language, second languages and third languages for different dialects within a country. Up in Canada, they speak the same language. Most of parts of Canada, they also speak French. But Helene Fournier and Rita Hop, Helene is on the right, Rita's on the left. So Helene's in red there, Rita is in purple. Rita is a dean at a smaller university in Canada, and Helene works for the National Research Council of Canada with Stephen Downes, who's famous for MOOCs. And they have the article from last week looking at the early CMOOC and the interaction patterns in there. They have a chapter in both my MOOCs book as well as in our special journal that we did on MOOCs and open education. And they talk about how to personalize these massive classes and think about how a connectivistic approach might give learners more freedom to express themselves than more of instructor-delivered MOOC like an XMOOC or some other hybrid kinds of MOOCs. So they believe that the road ahead involves much more personalization kinds of things. Future Learn, the last chapter of our book, Michael Sharples, who's recently retired, and Rebecca Ferguson, they wrote a piece about the future and what to expect. Said in many countries, mobile is the main means of access, so the courses need to be developed for mobile first, including the pedagogical aspects of the course, including transcripts of videos, including multiple languages, some of the same things that we've heard from other people. So that's what we asked some of the authors of the two MOOCs book and what they had to say about cultural sensitivity. Now, we went back to some people and asked them about personalization. We went to George Siemens, who wrote the foreword to this book, and he mentioned that there are companies springing up now doing artificial intelligence and adaptive learning, one called Smart Sparrow. And I'm going to San Francisco on Thursday and Friday this coming week. I'm going to meet with someone linked in with me from Smart Sparrow, and he's going to come to my talk on Thursday night. We may have lunch on Friday. I'll find out more about how Smart Sparrow personalizes learning. But George Siemens also mentioned that Carnegie Mellon has an open learning initiative with adaptive learning and statistics, and I think in geometry and algebra and other things there that a woman named Candace Steele, who's now at Stanford, helped push. There's also Superheroes MOOC from the Smithsonian's that use personalization through intelligent agents to foster dialogue and collaboration, he said. So there are companies out there doing AI like Acrobatic, as I mentioned, these are just some screenshots from Acrobatic. I'm not familiar with the company, but if you go to a conference sometime and you see them, and Smart Sparrow, which has heat maps showcasing where students are having problems with answer and what particular questions they're having problems with, so you can zero in on maybe the design of that part of your course and change it around a little bit, and that kind of thing, and give people adaptive forms of feedback at Smart Sparrow. Balaji Venkantaraman from the Commonwealth of Learning says they've designed MOOCs for, in my new book, they've designed MOOCs for farmers in India, agricultural MOOCs to run on low bandwidth phones, and they can hear a voice track as opposed to seeing the video. You can hear someone explain things about crop fertilization and rotation and design and delivery of crops and sell. Would you say it is financial planning related to them? In the MOOC on Mobiles for Development, the course team at Commonwealth of Learning received requests from groups of learners in different parts of Africa, Sierra Leone and Zambia, and they provided content materials on a DVD because they didn't have necessarily other forms of technology that would enable them to take the course. So they adapted the content that way. So they have, as I pointed out last week, a set of agricultural MOOCs, both for Africa and India, for pest management. You can see weather forecasting kinds of MOOCs, a nutrition MOOC, and climate change MOOC, and other kinds of things you can see here, all through the Egg MOOCs portal, if you will. So he says in their Pacific, Commonwealth of Learning supports the University of South Pacific. Now, University of South Pacific has 1 or 2 chapters in my upcoming book from Fiji, and then they partner with Sri Lanka. That's why I say 1, maybe 2. 1 from Fiji, 1 partner with Fiji and Sri Lanka. And they've designed a MOOC toolkit, MOOC kit platform specifically for the South Pacific. Social media was integrated in. Any interested learner can add his or her social media profile within the course. This gets people to discuss and create communities around the course. With text messaging, the bandwidth is lower and cheaper, and people can share more content more quickly. This facilitates more course participation without, contributes to the increased course participation, often overwhelming the instructors who aren't expecting students to participate so much. Now, 10 years ago, I interviewed someone in Fiji for my World is Open book that didn't get in the book. It got in the part we had to delete from the book, but it was fascinating hearing how they're dealing with iterations of new technologies and open education. Ratika Kajala, she says, doing a collaborative course requires that we engage the context, not just talk to it. We start by dialoguing and engaging students. The sensitivity will emerge through our Skype conversations and interactions. So they adapt the course based on what students say that they need through the collaborative dialogues that they're having. She teaches a feminist study MOOC along with 8 other instructors from other universities. And they talk about this in my book. One of their co-authors, Lisa Lash, who now has a book on MOOCs, so I've got on my stacks I could go run get. She did a MOOC called the Selfie Course, a Selfie Course MOOC. She says MOOCs often tend to misestimate the importance of situated experience in approaching learning, understanding again the context that students are in. Snapchat pedagogy, the ways that MOOCs overlook the importance of mobile phone as a vehicle for connecting students who are situated in a certain time, space, and status. So if you get a picture of someone, you get a better context. You find out what's going on, just like Jalin shared the snow that's happening here in Bloomington today. So she has a selfie course, as you can see there with her picture. I think she's taking, I don't know if she's taking that, it looks like she might. So the selfie course, and she had different people helping her, and they had, branding, identity, digital surveillance, biometrics, facial recognition, gender and dating, and so forth in this selfie MOOC. Sheila Jaganathan at the World Bank talks about their MOOCs on climate change and financial planning and literacy and poverty. They're having ways to incentivize through badges, through maybe certificates, through discussion forums that are moderated, hanging out in Google Hangouts, trying to customize to people. Melinda Bandelaria Beck, she's now the chancellor of the Open University in the Philippines. When she wrote our chapter, she wasn't the chancellor, she's become the chancellor. She said, think about the multiple paths of taking a MOOC. Think about the multiple ways to go through a MOOC, and the contents that you can provide, whether it's a podcast, a video, some text resources that can help one find their way, weave their way through the content, and also make them available on mobile. We're seeing a consistent theme about context, about mobile, about multiple forms of content, multimedia. In Africa, Griff Richards used to be working at the Virtual African University. Etienne Odala, he wrote his book with Bakery Diablo, but Etienne Odala, a grad of IST, is in Africa. She's writing a chapter for our next book, looking at teacher professional development across Africa via the MOOCs and mainly via open education. She just sent the chapter in. She's a little late, but we got it. And she wrote twice as much as what we asked, but we're about ready to edit that. Griff says the concept of personalization is laudable, but it might not be as important as just thinking about access, that there might be some other aspects or factors that are more important than that at this point in time to get the biggest bang for the amount of money that we're spending. Should we try to create simpler self-paced kind of courses first and just get people access to education and then start thinking about personalization? In Illinois, Vicki Cook and Ray Schroeder talk about pedagogy. Pedagogy relates to, in effect, pedagogy for adults and getting people more self-directed in their learning pursuits, which is Meina's dissertation. And actually, all the articles for next week, or for, I guess, what we after break when we come back, will be on self-directed learning. All 6 that are there are on self-directed learning. So my face-to-face class, we're going to have a festival of self-directed learning. I'm not sure what we'll do online in Canvas, but we'll do something. So that's interesting. I didn't realize every single article is on self-directed. She said personal notes to someone, personalized feedback, using someone's name, don't making it so impersonal is important to help people become more self-directed and feel respected, if you will. Her colleague there, so Vicki Cook and Ray Schroeder at the University of Illinois, Springfield, where Abraham Lincoln was raised. He was raised in Kentucky, Indiana, then in Illinois, where he became a lawyer, over in Springfield, the capital of Illinois. He says that groups are helpful, projects are helpful, getting people to find interest areas to work on specific problems that are relevant to them, building upon and scaffolding MOOCs to meet one's personal learning needs, and then to foster bouts or interactions of reflection. So projects reflect on what you did, activities reflect on what you did. And Ray writes for Inside Higher Education. He has something this week, in fact, I may have shared with all of you. So we did some research on personalization and MOOCs, and that got published in September. We found that most people doing MOOCs, some had taught just one MOOC, 55%, or and about 45% had taught 2 or more MOOCs. So people tend to take 1 or 2 MOOCs or teach 1 or 2 MOOCs, as you can see there, but they hadn't taught any. 56% hadn't taken any. So they had taught, most had taught at least 1, but most had not taken a MOOC. So it's a little bit difficult to ask about personalization or cultural sensitivity when they haven't taken a MOOC. Most are instructor-led with teaching assistants, 42%. No additional teaching assistant, 18%. So 1 out of every 5 or 6 are dying, no help and support. They're teaching a MOOC by themselves. And then some are CMOOCs, participant-driven, 13% were self-paced, and then we've hybrid and other. Meina has found similar things, not the exact same data in her dissertations, but you can see that they're relying on lectures and videos and readings and interactive assessments, PowerPoints, TED Talks, concept maps, not so much mobile, which everyone says is important. It's not so much simulations. As I mentioned last week, most use automated grading, or more than half, but they're not using other automated kinds of tools like intelligent agents or counseling tools or adaptive systems to help one succeed. And so, it's not really that intelligent today in terms of MOOCs. So we did a two-part study. The second one, was published in this journal, IRODL. But we also asked about their involvement in course design. Most people were involved in the course design, and most of the feedback within the course was peer feedback or system feedback, TA feedback. Instructor feedback was less, but it still was there, or self-feedback in terms of feedback, but peer was number one, system, embedded system. In terms of level of interest in personalizing, most were interested in personalizing their next MOOC. These people realized that they could do better, I guess, is kind of the sense that we got from this study. They hadn't taken MOOCs in the past. They hadn't really understood the learner point of view. And now the next iteration, they are interested in designing their next MOOC. I had one question I threw in that study just asking, did they make any friends? And most of these people made no friends in teaching a MOOC. They're teaching thousands of people or tens of thousands, and they didn't make any friends. I find that to be troubling. A small percent made 1 to 5 friends. I made tons of friends teaching my MOOC. Of course, I'm an introvert, as you all can tell. Meina's the extrovert in the room here. Just kidding. So we have a second study, and that first one got published. The second one's been sitting in limbo for a while, trying to look at diverse learners. So first one is personalization, second one is diverse learners. These instructors had limited online and blended learning experiences. They had, for the most part, low experience in the online environment, which means a lot of these people were arm twisted to teach a MOOC, were coerced, were talked into it, like I was, to teach a MOOC. They didn't have a lot of experience, so they don't know what to do, really. They need help. They need support. When you're teaching more than 100,000 students in some cases, there's a lot of people you're impacting. You need to think ahead about what you're doing. And so we asked, what are the ways MOOC learners can showcase their work? And some said through social media, some said through a sharing portal or exchange, some said through a gallery, through their blogs, but there wasn't. Most said that they don't share their work. The majority of MOOC instructors said students do not share. They do not showcase. The effort to address cultural diversity was middling. It's in the middle. Some were heavy, some were light, some were in between. But they want to do it. What they did do was creating transcripts, subtitling video, being careful with language, slowing their speech, as I mentioned last week, limiting text. Optional readings, additional things you could look at, optional tasks, optional assignments, 2 or more media elements to show the same content if you're a visual learner or a verbal learner. Letting students select pathways, about 1 of every 5 said that. Portfolios, collaborative teams, not so much. So optional readings, videos, yeah, that's happening. Badges, certificates, yes. Options within the course, maybe not so much. The first 2 definitely. So in terms of multimedia, content, feedback, language, on the left there, you can see there's a summary of things that instructors are doing. 12 said all videos and screencasts had captions and transcriptions. 1 person said providing a PDF and Word version material. So you can see the number of instructors doing different things, whether it's creating materials for different cultures, supplemental materials, 8 said that. Letting material be viewed on a computer, tablet, or smartphone, 6 people said that. Not using flash technology. Making the course available on an app, only 1 person said that. Slowing down, Dr. Bonk, 3 people said that. Sharing personal stories, 1 person. So these are a number of options out there. 10 ways to teach a MOOC, as I taught, this is me teaching my MOOC 6 years ago. Plan in advance. Plan, because once you get going with 100,000 or 10,000 or 1,000, you got to be ready. For 2, get multiple forms of feedback, peer, computer feedback, self-feedback, instructor, experts. prior students coming back to give feedback, interactive polling questions to see how people are doing within the MOOC. Ask them, that's Dr. Chuck Severance, who we had up earlier on the right, me on the left, but polling questions. Providing some choice, some variation within the course, so it's not one set path or place. Maybe bringing in a guest like we did with Dr. Phan today. That's Dr. Merrill on the left there, the famous instructional designer. Bring in Dr. Regaluth on the right there from IU. Bring in some people asynchronously and then or synchronously, and then discuss them asynchronously. Create learning communities to discuss what your interests are, whether you might be interested in clinical teaching or being a lecturer as opposed to maybe being a professor, or maybe nursing education compared to social work, compared to physical therapy, compared to education, communities. Recap what you're doing. Updates once a week. The person who recapped my MOOC got hired by Blackboard. She did such a great job. She was wonderful. Yeah, I missed that. You know, just awesome help that I got every week in my MOOC. Personalize the activity and experience where possible, using names, using location, using information that you might have. I had a globe next to me at all times. But share what you're doing. But don't overwhelm. So once a week, twice a week, share. But don't do it too much. And be willing to change. If it's not going well, change midstream and try something different. And my MOOC didn't go well the first week. We quickly changed it. It was the first MOOC. Engage. Engage. Okay, let's try that again. Engage. So I will post my slides at Dropbox, and I will share those with you. In fact, I think I already have sent you the links to all that. We're a little bit past where I wanted to be, but I promised that we would open this up for any questions of myself and any snow pictures we want to share today. So, yeah, that's a nice picture, by the way. Does anyone have a comment or a question? Anything they would like Meina and I to answer today about MOOCs and open education? And we will take a crack at answering your question. Comments, questions? Interesting. Anyone have a comment? Everyone's dying a quick death of zombieism. The monster is in. Long live the monster. Okay. The monster syllabus. Is that me on the left-hand side there? I think I saw myself sitting in the audience, not delivering. Anyhow, I'm tilting here. I'm wilting. It's an exciting area to be in, to look at MOOCs. And because they've only been around for 11 odd years and really fully understood, understood better since 2012, this is still a new entity. This is still something relatively recent. And so we have to consider that, right, in the general scheme of things. But I hope that 3 weeks almost talking about MOOCs and open education can provide some depth. We can start understanding where some of the research is related to instructional design, or related to learning, or related to motivation, or related to cultural sensitivity and personalization, or whatever the topic is. There's a wide range of things one can do in teaching a massively open online course. If there are no questions, I'm going to go back to read Meina's dissertation and finish that. We should give Meina a round of applause for sending me a final draft, or near final. She's going to send to her committee members once I'm done. Meina, do you want to comment briefly before we go about your dissertation and where you're at with your dissertation, what you've been doing?
I just want to say thank you for taking time reading my dissertation.
That's not good enough. So what did you I'm curious, in the past week or so, what did you add? What were you working on?
Oh, I did mainly the results part and the discussion part. So these are the two primary parts. So I may, after your feedback, I may continue to revise them. I'm not sure. Yeah.
So results of interviews, results of surveys, results of content analysis, or all that?
All of that. I mean, because I organized the results part based on the research question. So last time I mainly focused on the research question 2 and 3, I think.
Well, I want to hope everyone engages in rich discussions in Canvas related to this week on MOOCs and open education in the developing world or emerging economies. This could be the entire focus of this course in a couple of years after my book comes out related to emerging economies. Maybe it won't. I don't know. I don't know if they'll let me. But after this, we'll get into self-directed learning, motivation issues, participatory learning. That's what's coming up a little bit in the next couple of weeks. So I hope that this week the discussion goes well in Canvas and in the face-to-face class. I hope you all have a great spring break and don't think about this class, or maybe catch up on this class if you're behind, and maybe think about your final projects. I'll be grading all during the next couple of weeks. I'll get some back on maybe the tidbits first and the other part later. So again, thank you all. Since there are no questions, we will end a little bit earlier than previous weeks. I'm going to stop the recording and it's going to go